All right. So it took a little bit here to get things set up how I wanted. Um, we and actually I'm just gonna adjust that real quick. There we go. We're on the wrong lead. Um, I am Josh. To the top left, you'll see our boy Caleb. And the bottom left, you will see Mark. And in the bottom right, you'll see a random picture of a guy that looks like, I think, a beaver or something. That's our boy Craig, who's actually listening in to uh, record this as a podcast. I couldn't figure out a good way to not have Craig show up on video, so you'll get to see Craig's lovely voice. So we can transpose this. Looking over at the chat, I do see Anonymous checking in. Thank you for being the first person in here. Oh my goodness gracious, there's Dennis. We thought you were dead. um, but Dennis is already asking a question. Hey, we're only looking at one race. Um, so we'd kind of been going bouncing around a couple ideas. One of the videos that we did that kind of garnered a lot of good discussion, both on the Discord, and actually it garnered some pretty good discussion between us as well. Was we took the three of us just recorded different videos based off the same race. We all handicapped the same race and just kind of to show our process that way. So I kind of started thinking on a small riff to that, and I know I kind of put Caleb and Mark on the spot a little bit because I think I had this idea like at 5 p.m. today when I was lighting charcoal on the grill for dinner, and I was like, "Hey, this is what we should do tonight," and they're like, That's only like 2 hours to get that ready." So we'll probably touch on a topic similar to this at a different time, but pretty much we're gonna look at one race to start, which is going to be the Grade 1 Ogden Phipps here. I have the Brisnet PP here on my screen, and we'll kind of talk through it that way. But we kind of want to talk, I guess, a little bit, not just on handicapping the race, but how we would kind of, I guess, attack this race or use this race as part of another wager. Myself being mostly a single or two or three race better, and a lot of vertical play. I'll probably for the most part talk a little bit about this race, but one of the things that I kind of just was mentioning to Mark before we started was, hey, maybe you like 4 or 5 horses in here, but maybe you can take a quick glance at the race or two before and notice, hey, I see a single the race before or the race after or what have you, and this is how I can leverage this race the best in order to make money. Because we could sit here and talk till we're blue in the face about, hey, this is our top choice, and we like these horses as well, and it's like we name 5 of the 6 horses in this race, right? Or is it the 6-horse race? I think that's what it was. But we end up talking about every single horse that's in this race. But how would we use the horse in the race? How would we use the 3 horses we like? How would we best kind of take this sequence and try and make some money? So I figured the easiest way to do it would be to start with one race, and this will probably be kind of live, so we'll try and keep the talk going and not have too many awkward pauses. But I know if you hear Caleb furiously clicking in the background, it's because he's trying to probably look at like the 2 races before as well. Let's figure out what he's gonna do.
My clicking. Sorry, I should have muted.
No, you're fine. But in order to give Caleb a little bit more time, I have been on a little bit of a cocktail kick. So I finally was able to find mint. So I have a nice little mint julep here. I started the night with a blackberry smash, which is really quite delicious and actually I think better than this was. But I kind of just Googled a recipe for, hey, how do you make a mint julep? And I'm sure Chase will probably send me a message after this goes up on the podcast, and he listens to it and will be like, dude, you did everything wrong. That's why your mint julep wasn't as good as the other drink. But I know Mark was drinking Boulevardier before. What are you still drinking, sipping on that, or do you?
Yeah, working through a Boulevardier, which to me is just a really nice quintessential cocktail. A little sweet, a little sour, really kind of balanced. A lot of good flavors in there. It's good stuff. I like them a lot.
Caleb's probably drinking a Hurricane. Is that the?
I actually have no drink tonight. I just finished dinner and didn't grab one.
I'm
I have
sure. I'm
nothing
sure. I'm
fun.
sure. After about 20 minutes of talking about this race, you'll probably need one.
Yeah, I gotta ask, what do you think of the mint juleps? Because I talked to a lot of people, and they're like, "Ah, like if you drink, no one actually likes them. You just drink them when you're at the Derby and stuff." And that's obviously when I had my first mint julep. I actually thought it was pretty good.
Yeah,
So
it's
maybe
pretty nice. Yeah,
I thought it was solid.
yeah.
It's also
I
one of those
Go ahead, Mark.
It's also one of those drinks that there's a million variations of. You can use, you can flavor it. You can add a little bit of this or a little of that. I've seen it done with like raspberry or that sort of thing. Is sort of a little bit of a kicker. So, a little Cointreau, something like that. So there's a million ways you can kind of spice it up and play around with it. So it's a fun cocktail.
So the funny thing is that one of the uh, I think I was talking. It might have been in our chat, or might have been in one of our DMs or something we had going around. But I was talking about how I feel dumb sometimes, like taking like a $60 whiskey and like making a drink out of it. But I'll tell you, man, like depending on a drink, like it definitely makes a difference. I just made this with Old Granddad 114, which I think is pretty solid for 28 $30 or whatever a bottle goes for now. And yeah, I mean, this is a nice strong drink. I doubled the bourbon, and then I doubled the mint, but I don't think I doubled the sugar. So I think this is probably supposed to be a little bit sweeter. And I can tell that this probably would be a little bit better with a little bit more sugar, but no, I think it's good. I think with a little bit more sugar, it would be be a little bit more balanced. But um, and then Anonymous is drinking a Raz Cranberry Lacroix, which is actually I just finished a hibiscus Lacroix before I started drinking. But yeah, no, I actually like the julep. I've been on a bit of a cocktail kick lately. I bought some Campari today, so I'll probably make a Boulevardier and after this, and try that out. But I've been drinking Manhattans like a madman. So, um, but why don't we move on to this race here? Unless you got something, Mark?
No,
Oh,
I'm good.
don't know if you're gonna say something. Sorry. Yeah. So why don't we move on to the Ogden Phipps here? Mile 16th, which at Belmont is of course a one-turn race. We got a field of 6 here, and normally I would probably make some stupid comment about, oh, here we go with the 6-horse field, and this is a garbage race. Um, but this race actually is pretty interesting. I in that I would not be surprised if any of these horses won. Which sometimes I guess you could say that for most short fields. But sometimes you get a couple no hopers in there, even in small fields. Um, but even like the longest price on the board, who's blamed. I mean, if Ollie's Kandy doesn't send, I mean, Blame could end up loose on the lead here and maybe wire. Like, I mean, that doesn't seem crazy to me in this race. So this was a pretty interesting handicapping puzzle for me. I know, Mark, you pretty much had one sentence to describe this race. I don't know if you've since changed your mind.
I don't know if I've changed my mind, but I mean, when I did first pass at this, I thought the race went and kind of began and ended at Golden Award, and for me, that's sort of was the horse that sort of jumped off paper. Likes to win, it's got to win across the surface. Distance sort of, hits or square between the eyes. Seemed to be the horse I wanted the most of. I was a little surprised she was as tall as she was in the morning line. I don't know why necessarily. Besides the fact of I guess you could probably toss her last. She didn't really handle the off going and has a lot of layoff lines in her career. But besides that, figs really make a lot of sense here. And I don't necessarily trust West Coast shippers coming to any of the Naira tracks. They historically don't do super well, with the exception of real big days like, Belmont or Travers Day or those types of things. Golden Award was the horse that I wanted the most of in here. And I think, I'm sure one of you guys is going to talk about Point of Honor. She's a horse that, um, on her best day should be super competitive in here. I think the morning line is really wonky here, having her as short a priced favorite as she is. But yeah, I'm going to stick with it. I think Golden Award is the horse I want the most of in here. And yeah, see what you guys think of it.
Point of Honor is actually the second choice here because Ollie's Candy's 8-5 and Point of Honor is 2-1. So
Okay.
yeah, so they do have Ollie's Candy as the favorite. Yeah, I mean I looked at this race a couple different ways, and it really, like I said, when I first just was kind of like, I don't know, let's just do this race. I looked at it, I'm like, man, this is not going to be that interesting of a race, but pace wise, um, I am really interested to see what Blamed and Ollie's Candy do on the front end. Blamed is, just a speedball, is going to try and get the lead. If I remember correctly, won at a mile last time out at Oak Lawn, and has kind of been an on and off horse. So if you kind of look at her form pattern, you would just assume that she's going to be on the off side of her form here. She's if you're somebody who is a little bit newer, if you kind of look, you'll see occasionally you'll have a horse that will win the race and then will have a weaker effort and then come back and win a race and then a weaker effort. There's a theory about how much energy the horse it needs to give in order to give their best effort and how long of recovery it goes on. There's a couple different things. If you're someone who uses the sheets, the Thorograph sheets, they visualize it so you can see those kinds of form patterns a little bit easier. But Blamed seems to be one of those on-off horses. But what's interesting about Blamed is it seems like off the layoff usually tends to throw that weak effort and then comes back on the second off the layoff and runs her better race. So I think Blaine might be tuned up here and might be ready to fire a really huge race. It really just remains to be seen how hard is Ollie's Candy going to send. If Rosario gets in his head that he'll just outfinish him, I could see Johnny V getting out there and getting loose on the lead. Now, you do have to think at this point in his career, Johnny V is not exactly the most aggressive rider. So you got to hope that he knows he's the speed of the speed and he's going to get out there. But we have seen head scratching rides from pretty much every single top tier rider known to man. She's a Julie should also be forwardly placed, but I just don't think She's a Julie is fast enough. Is definitely not as fast as Blamed early. And Mark, you and I were talking a little bit beforehand. It doesn't seem like She's a Julie's really been the same horse since probably the past year or so. The La Troyenne maybe from last year was probably the last really solid effort that we saw from her.
I think I would say, yeah. And I guess I never elaborated on a pace scenario that I saw setting up, which is sort of, I probably should have gone into. But yeah, talking about She's a Julie, agreed. I think since her sort of, May of last year, that La Troyenne was the last real race she ran that you go, ooh, that really kind of jumps off the paper. Her entire last season just was kind of blah, and there was no real. I mean, obviously, she was running versus better than probably anybody in here. Dunbar Road, Blue Prize, Midnight Bizou, the Elate, those kind of horses are all monsters and probably better than anybody else in here. But She's a Julie just really hasn't fired that big effort that you're looking for in her 4-year-old season, and I don't know. She was great as a 3-year-old. Didn't improve as a 4-year-old. Is the expectation she gets better as a 5-year-old? I to my mind, I don't think so. And she was a horse that I was sort of comfortable, not utilizing in this race. As a vertical player, you probably have to, but I think as a horizontal player, she's a kind that I'm okay tossing. Josh mentioned Blamed. I look at her as an on-off type, and her last race she won, and I think she fares dud this race. But she does muck with the pace. And sort of how I see this setting up is I think Ali's Kandy's probably faster than Blamed. And Rosario, has no problem going to the front end in races. I think he's notorious as being, the closer jock, the guy that's going to come from behind and nail you at the wire. But he's got no problem being on the front end. And, I think Blamed and Ali's Kandy go at it. I really do. And I think it sets up Golden Award. I think it gets the best trip, gets the two a little bit of pace to run into, and can fire into those two. And I think of that first run closer type, Golden Award was the one I wanted, and that's why I sort of landed there. So let me clear that up, and I'll throw it back to Josh.
Yeah, so it's funny because you mentioned those two horses kind of hooking up probably early. I think at this point, I'm gonna fade Ali's Kandy in this race. I think that if Ali's Kandy goes to the lead and tries to duel with Blamed, I think that it's just not going to end well for either of them. She's a Julie's gonna do what she does and run, be a length off the lead, just sitting off and just not do any kind of running at the end. I really think the other three horses in here should get set up pretty nicely from a pace scenario with Golden Award, Point of Honor, and Pink Sands closing off the pace. I don't know why Shug has Pink Sands here. Pink Sands seems like a sprinter 1 mile type closing in. Now, this is only a mile on the 16th. But, I mean, her best efforts have been coming from shorter. I don't know if this extra half furlong is going to be too much. Did win at Monmouth at this distance. Looks like last year in June. So, she has gotten the distance before. But I really think that this does set up nicely for Point of Honor. I think Point of Honor, and I know Caleb and I were both pounding the Point of Honor drum a little bit in the Apple Blossom, and finished third. But I think with the fast pace early, I think this should set up nicely for Point of Honor. This I think I'm going to go back to that Point of Honor well here. And I am going to want a little bit, I think, of Pink Sands and Golden Award as well. And of the speed horses, I would want Blamed. So I would probably end up kind of keying most of my bets around these four horses, fading the chalk, and tossing out She's a Julie, because I think She's a Julie's a no-hoper in this one. Caleb, what did you see in this race?
Yeah, I think that we see the race unfolding similar from the pace perspective. I do think this will be a fast pace. And this happens to me all the time where I look at a race and I'm like, well, She's a Julie's going to send, and Blamed is going to send, and Kandy's going to send. So it's going to be set up for a closer. And then somehow, like, Blamed gets a loose lead and goes like 49 to the half. And I'm just sitting there like, oh, well, that's not how I saw this happening. But that being said, you can only cap it how it looks on paper. And I do think there's a lot of speed here. In terms of how we want to approach this race from a betting perspective, I don't have a super strong opinion in this race. There isn't like one horse that I really think is a standout. And I agree with your earlier comment that pretty much any horse could win here. The horse I'd probably say would be most surprising might be She's a Julie, but it still wouldn't completely surprise me. That being said, I landed up on probably both Point of Honor and Pink Sands. I kind of think Pink Sands is better going more like a 1-turn mile, maybe like a 7 furlongs. She has gotten the distance before at Monmouth, like you said, and that's a 2-turn mile and a 16th, but that was against quite weaker company than what she's facing here. She's 0 for 5 at Belmont with 4 of those wins. 4 of her 6 wins coming at Gulfstream. So I don't know. She just might be one of those horse for course kind of horses. I like this horse. I always end up betting her, and I've made money on her, so I'm probably a little biased. pedigree suggests she could run all day, and I think she gets a good pace set up. But I do struggle to see if she really wants to go this far and if she can actually outkick Point of Honor, who I guess leading into that would probably be my top pick. It really goes back to what you think of the Apple Blossom, because whether you want to admit it or not, the race probably does go through Ollie's Kandy, not just as the morning line favorite and the horse who probably ran the best last out race, but also in terms of the riding tactics. If Ollie's Kandy sends, I think she probably can't win, in my opinion. I don't think she can go with Blamed and Julie and then also hold off the closers late. But if Ollie's Kandy doesn't send and it elects to rate off the pace, I think that does change the dynamic a little bit, and it probably makes it a little bit harder for somebody like Point of Honor and Pink Sands to actually get there. Going back to that Apple Blossom, that was kind of a wild race. Rosario just blitzed it from the rail, set crazy fast fractions, and almost stole the race. Like, I thought that horse had no chance that day. And, CC had a monster effort to actually get up and just get a head in front of the wire. So that was a tough race. And CC came back and flopped pretty bad at Santa Anita, I think 2 weekends ago, running third in a 5-horse field. She was up against the bias that day, but still, I think the same thing could happen to Ollie's Kandy here, where that was a taxing race. And I know she's had almost 2 months off, but I get the feeling that might have really knocked the starch out of her a little bit, and we might see a bit of a dud. I think we'll get the same thing from Blamed. I think she is every other horse. She's really never been consistent in her career, so I don't think I would go to Blamed either. So I think Point of Honor probably does get the right pace set up here. At some point, you'd like to see her start getting in the winner's circle a little more. I've been backing her for her last couple starts, and she's always coming late and not quite getting there. But she did make up 21 lengths last time in a race that really the horses that were first and third, I think, ended up first and second at the finish, despite the fast pace. So I think Point of Honor gets the right setup. Castellano's been on fire. He was up for 2 of her 3 wins. I really think she makes the most sense here. But the way I'd probably approach this race is surprisingly going to be vertically. I think there's a real chance that Ollie's Kandy misses the board. And I think you can get a little bit cute and exactas here using some of the closers like Pink Sands and Point of Honor and perhaps even Golden Award. I'm surprised that's Mark's pick. I don't particularly love that horse, but looking at the form, like, I can't really knock anything about her. There's just something about her I've never thought she was really quite that good. But yeah, I think playing vertically here and trying to get around Ollie's Kandy is most likely what I'll do. Trying to use some of the closers on top and maybe key Ollie's Kandy in third or something like that of a trifecta.
Yeah, I think you actually bring up a good point, because I mean, Ollie's Kandy is a really good horse here, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Ollie's Kandy win this. But I think this is the place where I'm definitely going to try and beat her. Just way too short of a price. Now, things could change. I mean, since I'm playing single races, the tote board does influence a lot of what I do. So if all of a sudden I see Ollie's Kandy at 2-1, if I see Ollie's Kandy at maybe 5-2 or something because Point of Honor just gets slammed or something like that, Ollie's Kandy is a little bit more interesting, I think, at anything above 2-1. So when I say I'm going to toss Ollie's Kandy, I'm kind of just looking at the morning line. It really depends on how these prices move. But using these prices, I think the way that I would probably try and key this or play this vertically would probably be an exacta with the 1-2 over the 1-2, the 4, and the 6. I really think that as much as I don't like Pink Sands going this distance, I think that we're gonna get a good enough price that that I'll be willing to take a shot on Pink Sands. I think Pink Sands at 6-1 definitely kind of shows is probably the value in this race. 6-1, you only got to be right 20% of the time, and you're turning a profit. And I definitely think that Pink Sands probably wins this race 20% of the time. I think Pink Sands will probably get bet down. If anything, I would think that She's a Julie is not going to take much money here. She's a Julie being the longest price on the board would not surprise me whatsoever in this race. And of the speed horses, like I said, I think I like Blame the most. So I would probably do something like a 1-2 over 1-2 1-2-4-6 exacta, and hope that we get Ollie's Kandy off the board, and hopefully we're making a little bit of money off that exacta that way.
Yeah, I wish it was a bigger field, because I think this is a nice race to go vertical in and try to get around the favorite. But when you start playing tries in a 6-horse field, are you banking on the favorite running in the back half of the field, only beating 2 horses or only beating 1 horse? And then it just isn't a great wagering value, in my opinion, to start playing tries and supers in a 6-horse field. So I think exactas are the way to go, especially for getting value in Pink Sands. I am a little concerned that everybody's going to say, oh, there's 3 speed horses and I'm going to bet Point of Honor. And I don't think I'd go any shorter than 2-1 on Point of Honor. It's probably as low as I would take, but nevertheless, I think she's very usable in either horizontals or on top of exactas.
Like, honestly, looking at the optics chart earlier, it was 4 horses in the front half and 2 horses in the back half with a pretty high speed rating. So the 2 horses in the back half were obviously Pink Sands and Point of Honor. So this being a nuclear pace, and having Pink Sands and Point of Honor win this race, just looking from a pace perspective is how I see this playing out. But like you said, Caleb, how many times have we seen these New York jocks, especially like when they're somewhere other than New York? You go look at when they were in Churchill or they're at Gulfstream, and you're like, oh man, there's 4 speed horses in this race. Like, everyone's gonna send, and like next thing you know, 3 of the speed horses are like 4 lengths off the lead, and you're like, what the fuck just happened? So, yeah, looking at paper, I really think I'm gonna want to leverage most of my play through the 1 and the 2 vertically. If I was playing something horizontally, I think that to feel comfortable, I would want the 1, 2, the 4, and the 6. I still think I'm fading Ollie's Kandy here, horizontally.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue. I think there's also a case to be made if you have strong opinions elsewhere and you're playing a pick 5. I wouldn't talk you out of just buying this race. It's not a big field. There's at least 3 legit contenders, and probably the other 3 could very easily win as well. Not the worst race to hit the all button if you have strong opinions elsewhere and just hope to get around Point of Honor and Ollie's Kandy.
Also, a lot of times, just from a game theory sort of standpoint, when you get these races that have shorter fields, people try to get cute, and in their horizontals or pick 4, their pick 5, they're going to try to single or maybe just use 2 horses. So if you get just outside that, you'll actually get paid much outside the price of what the horse actually is in a horizontal. You'll get that get that leverage. So I really like that strategy, actually. Albeit I didn't have a lot of strong opinions of the rest of the sequence. I felt it a pretty tough sequence. It wouldn't be that's a smart way to kind of look at it.
Hey, and I'm just taking a look at chat real quick. I see Sam R saying that this looks like kind of like a grade 3 kind of field, and then John Massey is saying a COVID grade 1. I unfortunately think that this is probably a true grade 1 field. What horse, like every grade 1 can't have every single top horse in it. So you'd think a grade 1's got to have at least 2 or 3 of the top maybe 10 horses in its division running, right, in order to really be a grade 1. And the older female route division, outside of Midnight Bisou, I guess you toss in. Well, why am I blanking? The horse that just got off the long layoff that ran at Churchill.
Monomoy Girl.
Monomoy Girl. I mean, those are probably the two best older females. Cece, who ran a dud last time out. I mean, who, like, you know, there's just not. I don't really think that. I really think that this is what we got. I don't know. I don't really know what other horses that we're really missing from this field. That are
Is like Blue Prize and Wildcat and all, are they all retired already?
I think Wildcat's still running. I think Blue Prize retired. But yeah, I mean, you look at this race and there's two G1 winners in here. I think every horse in here has at least a G3 win. I mean, this is, and I think almost every horse in here is G1 placed. I think this is a legitimate G1 field, and I think people have to. I think what people look at and they're saying, "Oh, Jesus, is older fillies," and I want to see that big speed figure or that really impressive horse, and you're just not going to get that with the fact of a house. I'm going to do a video on this at some point here, but sort of how speed figures have changed over time. This is a G1 field, and I think this is a really legitimate G1 field. There's no, Elate's not in here. I get it. Or, a Guarana or a Dunbar Road. None of those are in here. But when you get away from those level of horses, this is a pretty damn legitimate field. And I think there's a lot of really solid horses in here.
I do want to ask, not to change the subject, but I'd agree with what you were saying. I think it's a solid, if short, field. What do you have, Mark? I know you use a DRF. Buyer for Ollie's Kandy and Point of Honor in the Apple Blossom.
I have Ollie's Kandy as a 98.
Okay.
And then what was the other one you wanted?
Well, Point of Honor, and then also Pink Sands, if you don't mind.
Yeah, 95 on Point of Honor, and 92, or wait a second, in the Apple Blossom, Pink Sands didn't.
No, just her last race.
Her last race.
Yeah, her last race was a 92.
The BRIS speed figures really like Pink Sands. I'm sure Josh is probably saying the same thing.
Yeah.
And visually, that doesn't make. I didn't watch those races. I don't know how fast they were, but like watching the Apple Blossom, it looked like a fast race. It had fast fractions. It looks like they were closing quick. A final time of 1:43 is not slow. So I really thought that race looked fast, but the BRIS number on that race came back significantly lighter than either of Pink Sands' last two races. So that it's one of those times where the speed figures, I don't trust them because it seems to be different than what my eyes told me. So I just want to check to see if Buyer had it the same way, but it sounds like Buyer had the Apple Blossom quite a bit faster than the Gulfstream Grade 2 that Pink Sands run in.
And one of the interesting things, especially talking about BRIS figures, since I am a BRIS user, and I mean, I use the figures more of a, hey, like, if I see a huge discrepancy in this horse's best figure versus the field, like, okay, the horse is a no hoper. But for the most part, I do not try to compare figures across distances, which I think is something that you can do with DRF figures, because I feel like they have a better variant between distances. Because what you're going to find is, like, if you start looking at like BRIS figures for like 1.5 mile turf races, like 1.5 mile turf races, like, you're like the horse that ran like 20 lengths off, like in 1.5 mile turf race has got like a 102. It's like, that horse like wasn't even close the entire race. Like, how do you figure that speed figure is right? And it's all based off of final time and others, and that. But they tend to, I think, inflate the numbers as the races get longer, which I think you could even see in Pink Sands number, between the inside information and the Rampart. The inside information, or inside info, I think it's inside information, but it's a G2 field. I mean, probably was a better field than the G3 Rampart, but because it was a furlong shorter, you got a discrepancy in the BRIS figure. So I always take them with a grain of salt. And if I am comparing BRIS figures, I am trying to look at like for like as much as possible. I try and match track, and I try and match distance when possible. And then I just kind of keep a running tally in my head. GP figures tend to be more inflated than, a slower track like maybe Santa Anita last year, or, like a Keeneland or something like that. So there's a little bit more mental gymnastics you kind of have to do with BRIS figures. After you use it enough, the figure starts to become somewhat usable, but there's a little bit more that you have to do, where I feel like with DRF figures, you can just kind of look at the raw figure, and Timeform's the same way. You can just look at the figure and know, okay, this figure, this figure is good unless it's from Parks. But yes, Chase, we did replace you by a bear.
It was a massive upgrade.
Yeah. His opinions, he's not going to get a single race wrong. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, the thing with the buyer's standpoint, and part of why I think people get a little weird about looking at buyer's speed figures, is how buyers are calculated. The average allowance horse, so like a good winning allowance horse, like an actual allowance horse, should run an 80 in any distance in any race. So these horses are running, 15 or 20 points higher than that 80 fig, which means that effectively they should be, at a mile and a 16th, I don't know, 10 or 15 lengths ahead, something like that. I'd have to actually do the conversion. And I think people are used to, 20 years ago, you saw, these big 100s and these big figs. And what it was is the average, and what's happened with buyers is the average allowance horse has gotten better, and the average stakes horses stayed pretty much the same speed wise as far as final times are concerned. So you just don't see those big figs anymore. A figure running, or a horse running a triple digit buyer speed fig is very, very, very rare, but people are kind of looking for those, like, oh, I want to see all these, the horses that have done that, the elites of the world, and they're just really hard to find these days.
Yeah, just looking at chat again real quick. So DJ Vasquez, hashtag what's Chase TB, just pick winners, JPW. DJ Vasquez says he likes his girl Blamed here. I actually am with you, DJ, of the speed horses. I like Blamed. And then there's just a little bit more argument. It looks like Danny Boy makes a good point that compared to some of the Grade 1 fields that Zenyatta ran against, this is a pretty strong field. He said specifically the 2010 Apple Blossom is a great example of a weak G1 field that she went against. So,
Zenyatta is the definition, and not to bash a horse, but she's the definition of a horse that was extremely well campaigned. And by that, I mean she effectively ran one quality race in her life, and she just happened to finish second in it.
Who was the horse last year that, late last year, that I was just banging the drum on because Safi Joseph Jr. just campaigned the horse perfectly? Who was it? Math Wizard? Oh, yeah. Man, dude, he was just freaking collecting checks left and right with that fucking horse and those Midwest derbies. He ended up winning the Parks, the Pennsylvania Derby.
Yeah, he was he had 500 grand in earnings and was still eligible for N1X allowance conditions.
So yeah, there is still some of that. Mr. Money, Chase bringing up another one. Mr. Money going and collecting those checks in those Midwest.
Yeah, derbies. He took the JV route.
Yeah. No, Chase, you can't chase your answer.
Yeah, none of us talking in here thinking that the Ollies could take all the money, and I do agree. I have a feeling that Ollies will be really overbet in here, and how I'm looking at this race, and other guys have kind of said it. To me, I had a hard time trying to construct a daily double or a pick 3, just because I think the races before and after are also pretty competitive. So for me, this is constructed like an ABC style pick 5 or pick 4 type of a race. I don't think you'd have to get super deep, but I think that's going to give you the best structure to take advantage of it. Or you can look in here and say, geez, I have an opinion and I don't like Ali's Kandy, and I'll just put a big win bet on a horse in here who I do like. And, maybe somebody like my horse Golden Award, if I can get Golden Award at 6-1, I might just put a wind slam in on that horse. And I think you very well might get that because I think Ali's Kandy might take a ton of money. The other one would be Point of Honor. If you can get Point of Honor in here at 3-1 kind of a range, you might just, fire a big win bet and call that your sequence. I think there's nothing wrong with that. I'd be spending $150 on a pick 5. Why not just throw up $100 win bet on a horse? Same, make it binary and leverage up an opinion.
So oddly enough, I think I might actually put in a pick 5 ticket tomorrow. I did swing at the Tristronic 5 today, and I whiffed. I know I lost the first 2 legs, so I just fucking gave up even looking at the rest of it. But I might put in a pick 5. Reason being is because in the 6th race, I see a single. Caleb, I need you to look at the 6th race real quick at Belmont and tell me if you see the single.
I'm scrolling up. I'm just going to go to the summary page and look for either the 1S horse or the 1E8 horse.
Because
I have a feeling we're both on the same horse, Josh.
Is it the 4?
Can't win.
Now scroll up and look the jock that's on the 4.
Is it Kendrick?
It's absolutely 100% Kendrick.
I knew it.
100% Kendrick on the lone E horse in a 6 furlong turf sprint. I mean, I am gonna fucking send it in on this horse. There is no way that this horse is gonna be 9-2.
No.
How's the turf blend playing? I haven't really watched much.
It's Belmont. It's gonna be speedy, and it's okay inside as opposed to Saratoga turf.
Oh yeah, it's the inner turf too, so that's gonna be even more speedy.
It's usually even more speedy. Rails are out too. It looks like
the morning line on this race are an absolute joke. That 4 is gonna be 2-1, and the only other horse you can use in here is the 9. Who I can make a million reasons that I don't really love. Mainly the amazingly long layoff, and the horse doesn't necessarily love Belmont. Besides that, there's no one else in this race.
Yeah, I know. We needed a Chad Brown horse in here just to take some of the money off of this 4. But this 4 is going to be the morning line. There's going to be the post time favorite.
Who is the morning line? I only capped the last 3 races. So who is the favorite?
It's the 8,
I guess.
And then you got Pagliacci and Mad Monies as Mad Monies is at an MTO. Yeah, it's an MTO, so never mind.
Does Mike Maker have a win yet at this meet?
He does not. He's 0 for 14.
Yeah, I think it's unlikely to continue, but it's something to keep an eye on.
I very much do not like Kitten's Cat in there. I think that horse probably needs to go a little further.
I'm going to be running a ton of money through this 4, assuming that we get some kind of price. But I have a feeling that it's going to be really short here.
Wow, there's some. I'm glancing at the optics plot, and there is some bombs that look very usable just according to optics, without actually handicapping it myself.
I would tend to agree that there are some bombs, especially in a turf sprint, that are super, super useful. Obviously, the 4 is logical, but that 3 that's way out there with that big square, who's a monster price, I think, on the morning line.
Yeah, the 1 and the 3 both seem very usable at 20-1 and 15-1, just based off the optics. I haven't really, like I said, looked at the form.
So yeah. Stuart in the chat, who I think is Keep Pounding in Discord, says everyone watched the On the Wrong Lead Lone Speed Fast 5 though 4 will go off at 2-5.
The horrible thing is we do have this effect. We get on these horses and the lines just get murdered. Yeah, the 3-4 Fortitude actually is one of those. I don't know if we call it a Josh type horse but I guess it would be a Mr. Middle Move type horse. A horse has some back class that makes it really interesting in here. Hasn't been on the turf in about 10 starts, but if you go back 10 or so starts to a 5 furlong race at Colonial, ran a fig that probably wins this and won that race as well. So yeah, at 15-1, the 3 in that 6th race is super interesting.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting because I always like. There was a horse that was running in the Stronach 5. I should probably go look and see how he ran. But you get these horses where like you have 1 or 2 turf tries like a year ago, and it's like their best races ever. But for some reason, they decided to just run it on dirt the rest of the time. And then they come back after a long time back onto the turf. So it's always interesting to see you sometimes find hidden form that way when you see, hey, this horse has run its best races on turf. Why don't we try it back on turf for some reason? But
Yeah, there's also something I'm kind of scratching my head here at Fortitude, because DRF has the horses winless on turf, but the horse appeared to have won the race at Cologne.
disqualified.
He was disqualified.
Disqualified second, yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those times where you could also just sort of figure this is clearly like a mid-Atlantic circuit horse. Jamie Ness trained, probably runs at Laurel Parks, Penn, Delaware. And there was no turf racing there during the winter, which is the last 8 or 10 starts this horse has made. Could have just been running to run. And now Ent comes in here at Belmont, gets back on the grass. The horse is technically 0 for 7 on grass, but clearly did cross the wire first in that one sprint and definitely had speed that day. So I think that's an interesting plort. I don't love Ruben Silveira taking the mount, but 15-1, I think that's a very usable horse if you're not going to single the 4.
But yeah, I think besides that, there's not a lot of other horses in there that really jump off the page at you.
Dennis is asking if any of you guys saw the Shug horse Creed that ran yesterday.
I did see that race, yeah.
I did not.
He was like the 8 horse, I believe. It was a maiden race. He ran his debut at Tampa, and I think he ran like second or something like that. It was a visually impressive race, but I don't think there was very much in that field, to be honest. So I wouldn't run to my Derby Futures window to bet just yet. But no, the horse looked good. I don't know what the speed figure came back.
I did a little homework for Anonymous here. Danny Gargan does have a turf horse running in the first race, so he says he's going to slam any Gargan horse on a turf when plays show.
Danny Gargan's good on the turf,
but it looks like he's got 2 horses entered tomorrow. One's on the turf, one's on the dirt.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we kind of got through the race that I wanted to get through, and I wanted to just talk about my single in the pick 5. I didn't really. I started looking a little bit at some of these other races. What was the other maiden race? Was it race 7? Is that the one with the 2 Chads? Yeah, that was the one with the 2 Chads. So I need to shame Mark here a little bit. Although I think Mark technically didn't say that he liked the horse. He was just more saying that there was a lot of talk about the horse. This 2 Dovima, this is a turf race. So I want to be very clear that this is a race on the turf. Mark, this is a turf race. Okay?
So it's on the green stuff.
It's on the green stuff, exactly. So for our viewers at home who are watching live, let me scroll in a little bit here. Let's scroll up to the sire. This looks to be Union Rags.
I believe it's a French horse.
Yeah, I think maybe it's a French horse. We know Chad loves French horses. Okay, let's scroll over here. Okay, 14% mud, not bad. Not 5% turf. 4% first time. That can't be right.
Union Rags is the worst turf sire in North America.
Oh my goodness.
Bernardini's probably a close second, but even Chad, I won't take this horse on the grass, especially with Jose getting up, who's been like maybe 5th or 6th best jock at the meet so far.
Yeah, where I was going with Josh as we talked about this horse was a hype horse last year. It was sold to Peter Brandt for $440,000 as a 2-year-old. Ran a 20 and 4 fifths at the OBS, which as a 2-year-old is scary fast. And and then also that was a pinhook as a $150,000 yearling. So I understand that Union Rags is absolute junk on the turf, but it's a really weird spot because Chad doesn't tend to prep horses. There are certain trainers that will give a horse a turf try as a prep race, thinking it's a little softer on them or something. He's not a person that preps horses on the turf to run them on the dirt. So I'm sort of head scratching why this horse is here. And it's Peter Brandt who doesn't tend to keep horses just to keep them. He's going to drop in a claimer if the horse isn't something. So, and the works seem to be fairly legitimate in there. So, it's 6-1. I'm super interested. Yeah, I understand 4%, yada yada, but there's certain stats that just don't apply to Chad Brown.
If Chad Brown gets that horse and wins, then like he's got like the man is officially just like a magician on turf. Like if he gets Union Rags horses to win on the turf, like I don't know what to say.
Yeah, can't bet onion rings on turf.
Oh my goodness! Especially when his other horse is a Dancilli, like a horse with actual turf pedigree. Yeah, dude, that's just tough.
Yeah, I mean, at a glance, A, I'm surprised neither of those are the favorite, but B, I actually think I like the favorite best, probably the 10.
Yeah, and this could be one of those cases where, and how I actually capped this race is I had the 10 as a lone A. I think this is a race where you're getting that 5-2 morning line. There's all sorts of, Claverack horses, a bunch of Chad Browns, there's a Belmont horse that looks like it might be live in here. Every trainer and angle and everything else, you have, JJ getting on a 20-1 morning line Georgia Abreu horse. That actually makes some sense in here. There's a whole ton of angles that are going to draw money. This 10 might actually go off at a decent price, and you might be able to just get cute, get through the 10, and might even be able to win bet this 10. I really did like the 10 here quite a lot.
Yeah, the 1A kind of interested me a little bit because it was a horse that they ran at Aqueduct on the dirt. But it's a lemon drop kid, so that probably wants turf out of a more than ready dam. So, I think that this horse would be able to get to the mile distance. Is definitely a router, and I think it's going to appreciate the grass. It looks like Dutro is looks like 3 for 9 first on the grass, so might be one to kind of keep an eye on here. But yeah, the 10 does look pretty strong. Christophe Clement on the turf is pretty dangerous. Got kind of unlucky to not break its maiden at Gulfstream, and is probably gonna be short price to try and break its maiden here in this race.
I just thought out here, you do realize Dicky Dutro is winless on the year, and he's got a 4% jock on the meet up on the horse, right?
I mean, he's only raced 7 times, so if he wins one, all of a sudden he's 12.5% on the meet. So
4 for 7 in the money. I mean, I wouldn't throw him out for that. Lescano's been cold. I wouldn't talk you off that horse at 15-1. I wish he wasn't coupled because I have zero interest in the one itself, and I think you get a better price. But
I did take a long look at that 1A, and I don't have him on my play here, and I may move him in if I do a pick, pick 5 here, because it's the kind of horse that could definitely step forward, getting on what should be the right surface, and Dickey is. I mean, he was known for firing first time out 20 years ago, but he's known to be a guy that races them a little more into form these days. So it wouldn't be a shocker horse.
Yeah, the other horse that kind of jumps out at me a little bit, but once again, if we're talking about low percentage jocks and jocks that I just don't really like in Dylan Davis, the 6 Tis Legal, at least on BRIS, has the best last time out figure, and just missed by half length at Gulfstream. So I don't know how weak that number came up on Bayer, but looks pretty strong here on BRIS.
Which horse is this again? The 10?
6.
Sorry, I was reading chat notes. 69. Yeah, I think that horse is one that I do have listed as one that I do want to use. Dylan Davis sort of makes you kind of go, but but no, that's a interesting horse. And I know Dennis was mentioning this Belmont horse, the 11 on the outside, who also is one that again will probably take money and is usable in some degree. Depends on how you build around the horse. My issue is that Belmont is not known for having turf horses, or at least firing with horses first time on turf. And Bill has not been hitting it a real high percentage. I realize it's the horse, not the trainer or the connections, but they do often kind of point you in the right direction. And it's one that I went, okay, it's interesting. Pedigree is pretty solid. They paid a fair amount for the horse. Interesting, but then kind of went, there's a lot of things that talk me away there.
Yeah, this is an interesting race because maybe I say that the 10 is the likeliest winner. And let's say he actually goes off 5-2. The 7, I don't consider to be that much less likely to win, and he's 20-1. And I think there's not very much separating the top pick from the 6th or 7th pick in this race. And you're going to get a much, much better price on those, 5th, 6th, 7th pick horses like the 7 and the 6 and whoever else, Josh's 1 or whoever. So I really think it's a race where I could see some people are going to play the 10 and maybe both Chads or something like that. But I think that this is a much more competitive race than the odds are going to indicate. And to answer Dennis's question, the 7 is actually second on BRIS Prime Power, which is surprising. I like the horse, but yeah, that's very interesting.
It's also one of those races where I kind of lost my train of thought, but yeah, I don't. First thing, I don't think that 7 goes off at 20-1. I don't think you'll get that. I think you'll get much more, considering how JJ's riding and all of the. There's a lot of things that can kind of connect you to that horse. But obviously, massive jock upgrade. George Abreu is a good trainer, and he's good second, very very good second time out. But yeah, there's a lot of ways you can go in this race, and it's one of those sort of races where you play the game of say say that 10 takes a ton of money. Does it make more sense to just single through the 10, or does it make more sense to completely ignore the 10 and take the sort of next 5 you like? Sort of like the 2, Josh's 1, the 7 in here, the 2, the 3, the 5. There's a few of them you can get to here. Use those as sort of a bundle and sort of ignore the favorite and hope the favorite doesn't win. There's a bunch of ways you can approach this. It's a really interesting race from a betting standpoint.
Yeah. I think from the 8th and then the 10th race that I've already capped, I hated both favorites. So I'm not going to be embarrassed to spread here or eat chalk here if I have to, even if I do spread, because the way I'll probably have a ticket is that if it chalks out, I'm not going to have it. And that's okay because I'm playing against a couple of the favorites. The 8th race favorite, I think, is usable. I just don't like him that much. I hate the 10th race favorite.
Yeah, I agree with you on both accords. So what is behind the bench the favorite?
Behind the couch?
Behind the couch, sorry. The 9 horse. Yeah, I don't like that horse that much at all. A horse that has one race that you're building your whole thing on that was on an off track where the horse should love. Kind of you doubt all the figs, and it doesn't make a ton of sense coming off the long layoff. But yeah, there's a bunch in there that I could get to that at prices where I would be much more interested than using a favorite there.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely I just took a quick look at this race. The anti Caleb, I actually kind of like the 5 here, which is Quality Stones, speed horse, with Kendrick aboard. It's Bruce Levine trained. Won first out as a maiden, and is coming here against winners. I know that's Caleb hates betting these kinds of horses, but I mean, at 8-1, the horse's speed figure is pretty competitive with the rest of the field, and I always think that a horse second time out is going to improve, especially if they won their first time. So I could see this horse definitely improving and winning here, especially if we get a good price. This is going to be a horse I'm going to want to use. I think my top pick here is probably going to be the 7, Officer Hutchie. Has got 2 wins. Has got the one at a maiden claiming level. It just has good form. Has 2 seconds and 2 2 wins in 4 races. Finished behind second place, in a New York State bred restricted stakes race, and then finished second in the allowance and came back and won optional claiming. So I think that this horse is probably should be the favorite here. It looks like Behind the Couch has got better speed figures, but I mean, wasn't really in the last race. I mean, was just in hand the whole time and ended up losing by 5 lengths as an odds-on favorite. Was vanned off the race before and then lost as a favorite in a similar company at Belmont last year. So I'm just not really into this 9 either. I think my top pick here would probably be the 7, and I would definitely want to use some of the 5 here, which is the maiden facing winners first time.
Yeah, I don't hate your 5, even though I don't like betting horses that just broke their maiden. Like, it's usually a function of price. If I get 8-1 on that horse, I would use the horse. I find that fine. It's more or less the Chad Brown horse that fails to break his maiden in 3 starts, and then he finally breaks it, and then comes back in a first level allowance and is sitting at 8-5. And I'm just like, well, no, I'm going to let that horse beat me. I do like your 7. I agree here. Not my top pick, but I do like it. My top pick would probably be the 10.
So we have the same horse for top pick, really?
Yeah.
I'm just literally waiting for you to get done so I could bring up how much I like the 10 and nobody.
Yeah, like the 10 looks awful good. You get the jock up who was on for both of this horse's best 2 races. You got to figure probably in a little over his head, going a mile 2 back, and still ran a decent race, all things considered. Then comes off a 6-month layoff. He hits the gate out of the break and this is a horse that wants to be upper just off the pace. He comes out dead last by 7 lengths, and he's never going to be successful from that position. Winner was 7-length clears, so that race loss really isn't even as bad as it might seem. And that was the Victor LeBron. You now go back to John Velasquez, second off the layoff here. I think this horse makes a ton of sense. So I'll be using the most of that horse, and I'm not going to get into the analysis angle. But don't sleep on my boy, Heeman Harkey, on the 6, because that's a bomb that I'm going to have on a couple tickets, and I think will get totally ignored. But I'm going to try to work him onto a couple tickets at a price.
Yeah, my other thing with a 10 is 10 gets back to an appropriate level and is kind of outside drawn tactical speed. Should be on or just off, and Johnny can work a trip at a track just about as good as anyone else. But I think you're insane on your Harkey horse.
By the way, it's LeBron. I believe this N is silent.
Okay. Like
that's how Pete always says it. Victor LeBron.
Is that like Union Rags?
Yeah.
On turf?
Yeah, exactly.
You the Harkey on just the horse for course angle? Is that what you're going with here?
Mostly, I'm just assuming this horse might like Belmont and hate Aqueduct. And I don't know how he looks on buyers, but 3 of his last races, 2 of them fit. One of them wasn't really that bad either, where he was kind of wide from the 10 hole. So, yeah, it's more of like a horse for course kind of angle, and the fact that he's not out of the question based on figs. I don't know how he looks on buyer, though.
Yeah, all of her last 3 or 4 races sort of do make sense here, but she's the up and down type of horse again, and my issue is that last race was the up. I expected down here. It's kind of a pretty classic up down style running form, but again, maybe she just doesn't like Aqueduct. And if you toss all the Aqueduct races and get back to that last Belmont, that claiming 25 N2L, that race probably wins this. So if you're going by that analogy, I don't hate it. And Harkey's going to get 1 or 2 on the meet. So yeah,
he's going to get 1 somewhere.
I'm still waiting for that Ben Hernandez horse to come in.
He'll get a couple.
So kind of cover you said last race, or
you got I mean, might as well, right? At this point, we're going to focus on one race, and it looks like we're just going to cap the entire pick 5. This allowance 1 mile on the turf. I have not looked at this race. I looked at the other ones briefly. So, Caleb, I know you said you looked at this race. What did you have here?
Yeah, I hate this 2. I won't have this 2 on a single ticket. I've made my most profitable bet in racing is probably betting against cheap Pletcher horses on turf. Um, I just find that they don't often win. They often get overbet. Like this horse has had the easiest of leads in his last time, 49 to the half on a slow pace, and still couldn't hang on. And a starter allowance 40. I mean, he was beaten in a claiming 35 non-winners of 2 lifetime race before that. I just don't think this horse is very good. And I think there's other speed in this race that he has to contend with. And I don't see him getting an easy lead, or her an easy lead. Sorry. I think the other speed is cheap, to be fair, like horses like the 1 and maybe the 8. But I'm not interested in that horse at all. My top picks were actually the 4 and the 9. I'm sorry, not the 4, the 5 and the 9. The 5, I know Maker's been a little bit cold, but Castellano's been really hot. This horse was stuck behind a slow pace in his last race, in her first start in about 4 months, and only lost by a nose against a similar level to what she's up against today. I think she makes a lot of sense here. And I also like the 9 at a bit of a price. This is one of those times I think the BRIS number is way off. They gave her a 94 in her last race, which is probably 10 points faster than anything anybody else in this race has run, according to BRIS. So I don't know that that's right. I don't believe it. But regardless, I kind of like the horse. It seems like maybe just didn't quite have it all together in her first start as a 2-year-old. Which is understandable. Came back and ran an improved race on the turf. Beat 4th, but beaten less than 2 lengths. They tried to put her back on the turf at Gulfstream Park West. It gets washed off. She ends up winning anyway on the dirt. So they think, okay, well, let's try her on the dirt again. And she responds with a nice race in December at Gulfstream, where she just gets run down late on the dirt. And the winner came back to win again in her next start, and the show horse came back to win again in her next start. We Miss Susie actually is a halfway respectable allowance horse now. And these are all races as a 2-year-old. If she improved at all on those races, I think she'll be a handful here. And the service, John Service, doesn't have the best numbers dirt to turf, pretty poor. But you're getting a horse that has tactical speed, doesn't seem to need the lead, gets a good aggressive front running jock, and at 15 to 1, I'm very interested in that horse.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to beat you up on a 15 to 1 horse. My issue is that the worst, that the Fig came on that 1 mile turf race at Belmont, came back as a 48. Seems, by what she's run so far, that she really is more of a dirt horse than a turf horse. Yeah, sure, maybe there's some excuses to be made if service wasn't 3% dirt to turf. That's a hard horse for me to get to. The price that I would be more interested in is the 7 Princess. I don't even know how to say it. Fazia, the Linda Rice horse. I get the long layoff. It's a little suspect. You would expect there's been turf racing for a little while, and you would expect her to, go down to some other race. But Linda pretty much doesn't ship, so don't love the long layoff, but besides that, she does need to step forward off from that 2-year-old maiden score. But again, a horse that you expect to move forward second time out, and Linda won't be a 0% trainer on the meet for a long period of time. She'll put it together. So that was the one that I sort of at a bit of a price was interested in. I think beyond that, I think we were all kind of on similar horses. The logicals are pretty logical here.
What do you think of the 6? That's the one I was a little unsure about. Leaving the Chad Brown barn, but going to the Brad Cox barn, who's 57% so far.
It's disgusting, this meat. I think that's a must-use type of a horse. I always have that rule of I don't like things out of the Chad Brown barn, but there's a couple of people moving into their barn I'm okay with, and I think I would use the horse moving into the Brad Cox barn and not be as scared of it as if it was moving into some other trainer that wasn't quite as on fire. And Brad Cox is pretty damn good off the clam as well.
Yeah, I actually really like the 6 here. I think my top pick here will probably be the 5. I think the 5 fits the most. Like we have said earlier, Mike Maker is not going to be 0% much longer either. And these longer turf races, mile plus, are kind of his thing. So I think that this is this horse is going to be in a great spot here. The 6 is going to have the run style, I think, that fits this race. Upon quick look, it does look like there's a fair bit of speed in here. So I would think that that something from a couple lengths off the pace is going to close into this. So this should set up nicely for a more off the pace horse, like maybe the 5 or the 6. I did try and like the 4. I really looked hard and really wanted to like the 4, but I just don't think I can get there. But this might be a horse to maybe look out for if you're going to try and play something vertically. This horse, easily is one that's going to be a very long price. That is definitely got a shot to hit the board. I don't really think that the horse has got a shot to win. Especially with the 5 and the 6 here. I think the 5 and the 6 make the most sense. I do like your Kendrick horse, as always, because Dennis even made a comment that, oh wow, Josh picked the Kendrick horse. I really do like the Kendrick horse. Like you said, that speed figure last time out is probably heavily inflated by Gulfstream, but yeah, anytime you get a Kendrick on a speed horse, I always want to look. It seems to be pretty decently bred for the turf, and yeah, I don't think that distance is going to be a problem for this horse. So I definitely think that this is a sneaky spot for this 9. Of course, it's going to take money. I don't think we're going to get 15-1, but especially with that key race angle last time out. But you were going to say, Mark? I think you were going to make a point midway in there somewhere.
No, I was just going to say your 4 is a horse that is 12 of 24 in the money, but only 1 win. So that's the kind of horse that, me being a horizontal player, I just toss. But you being a vertical player, that's almost a must-use horse. It's one of those very binary price horses that you have to, if you're feeling like a trifecta or a super, you really have to use that horse. But as a somebody who's more horizontally focused, it's just a horse I can toss and sort of move on to the next race. And isn't going to beat me very often. So yeah, I agree with you. I think if you're vertically inclined, that's a must use at a price.
All right. Well, I think we pretty much beat this sequence into submission. So I guess why don't we just go around the table real quick. Caleb, what are you mainly focusing on tomorrow?
Honestly, I'll probably be a little bit late tomorrow. I've been so disappointed with the quality of the Santa Anita racing lately that I'm probably not even going to look over there. They had 2 good weekends and it's been trash ever since. Like 5-horse fields, they had a $70 pick 5 today. It's just not fun. So I'll probably focus at Belmont. I might glance at Churchill and spot play, but I know that there's the mandatory pick 6 at Gulfstream tomorrow. I know a lot of people are going to focus on that, but I have a hard enough time at that track when it's decent horses running during the championship meet and decent jockeys and trainers that I know. So trying to take an honest stab at that when most of the big name jocks and trainers are out of town and it's going to be probably 5 cheap claiming races, I just don't think I'm going to take a shot. So yeah, I'll probably focus on Belmont if anything tomorrow.
Did you look at Churchill race 11 and see who's running?
No, why? Who is running? Is it Zulu Alpha?
No, it's not. It's another horse that you don't like.
Arklow.
Yep. Your boy Arklow.
I guess I'll have to play that race then and I can figure out
8-5 favorite on the morning line. Oh man.
Money.
That is just, I was talking to Mark right before and I was like, Caleb's gonna love this. 8-5 on Arklow.
Are the rest of his partners in crime in there? Like, nope. Seller's Joy just ran and Channel Maker just ran, so he probably has to face
there.
Yeah, his normal losers.
No.
Admissions office, okay, he hates to win. Rise the Guy hates to win. I see a couple in there.
I
Because of
was
Slam, I've been on that horse for a long time. He owes me.
yeah, I was telling Mark that I do really like Tis the Slime in here. But
Honestly, I'm convinced that you cannot wire this Churchill turf course right now. Like, I had the lowest of lone speeds in a race on Thursday, I think it was. Like, horse was clear, turning for home, and he like hits the fucking rail. Like, by himself, runs into the rail, and then ends up getting caught by like a neck. It's even when the horse should win, it's like the gods are not willing to let the Churchill turf routes be wired.
yeah, what's really funny is uh, I uh, I told Mark before this. I was like, "Yep, I'm only downloading Belmont and Churchill, and I'm not allowing myself to be suckered into playing Santa Anita again." It's been pretty sad. Those first couple weekends made me really excited, and then yeah, it just kind of everything just ended up closing up. Like the horse population is a huge problem right
Yeah,
now,
they just don't have the horses.
which is weird because Golden Gate seems to be able to fill those races pretty easily. So
Oh, if this two could wire at Los Al, this is gonna be nice.
hopefully
What are you
get.
focusing on? Are any of you guys taking a shot at that Gulfstream pick six?
Nope.
I will not be. No.
I mean, I might if only if my brother like annoys me and wants to do like a split ticket, then maybe I'll like take $100 stab, like $50 each at it. But I don't know, man. I'm still really sour about that Gulfstream Park West closing day one where I was live to like 2 or 3 horses in the last race, and one of the horses I liked had Paco aboard, and like Paco just fucking left midway through because he got mad because he got DQ'd or something. And it's just like, great. And the next thing you know, he gets some fucking no-name rider on the horse, and ugh, it was just frustrating. But
Yeah, because you were asking, Josh. I will probably be fairly light through the day. I'm going hiking in the afternoon, so I'll probably be on for Los Al, which is yeah. And then the following weekend, obviously racing gets a lot better, so I'll be more involved next weekend. But yeah, just playing some Los Al, having a lot of fun here.
yeah, I mean, I'm sticking strictly Belmont and Churchill. Oh, and Woodbine. I'll be playing Woodbine too. I forgot that Woodbine wasn't on today, but it'll be back on tomorrow. So, I know Shu had mentioned that the card looks really good, so I should download that and take a look. And then I am gonna try and do a write up for Churchill for tomorrow. I'm gonna be doing the Daily Gallops contest. I think my opponent is the Stag Man or the Staggy, Mr. Staggy, whatever his name is. So he's one of the guys who posts a lot of plays on Twitter. So we'll see if Dennis actually said that he thinks I'm gonna win. So Dennis is fucking just put me in the loser circle, and I'll be 0-3 for sure after his vote of confidence. But yeah, that's what we got going on this weekend. If you haven't already, I did put up another Fast 5 video. We'll be putting those out probably 1 or 2 a week for the next couple of weeks till we get a nice little library on that. If you guys got any ideas, let us know. And then, like I said, if you miss part of this, it'll be on YouTube, and then I will put it up onto our podcast feed. So until then, we missed Chase again today, but as usual, Chase has got family stuff going on. I believe it's his daughter Madeline's birthday tomorrow, so happy birthday, Madeline. Hopefully you annoy your father with all of the games that we purchased, and hopefully you make his life miserable. By making him play the same damn game over and over and over again, because kids love to do that. So shout out to Madeline, happy birthday, and then we will